Friday afternoon. That'll have scared you, because obviously that's not a track on the album that we're listening to. So forget that, everybody. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of that album. And today we're doing Spiritchaser by Dead Can Dance, which is I don't know. Is it niche? I don't know. Maybe, but an interesting choice. So why Dead Can Dance?
Well, thanks, Adam. Lovely to see you again. Why did I choose it? I think building on your point, I do think there's something incredibly unique about this band for a whole variety of reasons. Hopefully, when we play a few tracks, people will hear the incredible vocal of both Lisa and Brendan. And then the musicianship that goes with it, which we can talk about. There are a couple of other things. I think I'm not sure how much what I would call world music we've had on your shows, and that's kind of one of the things I just thought would be quite interesting to kind of explore. They also sit on, I think, one of the most incredible record labels that we've ever produced, which is 4AD. And that brings in a lot of stories and a huge amount of interest for myself. It is spiritual, and I think that raises a lot of interesting things. And I spotted, I don't know when it was, but you mentioned on one of the occasions about, I think, teasing people to say, oh, I wonder if somebody would do something on Dead Can Dance. So I lifted the challenge and the mantle.
You did. So 1996, interesting year. The first flip phone was launched. Mike Tyson knocked out Frank Bruno. Interesting that should happen. Take That split up. Madonna became a mum. Google began indexing the web. And the Ford car was launched. So films: Independence Day, The Rock, Twister, Mission Impossible, The Nutty Professor, Fargo, Evita, Jerry Maguire, and Trainspotting. Books: Game of Thrones, The Green Mile, Executive Orders, Tom Clancy, The Runaway Jury, John Grisham, and albums: Everything Must Go, No Code, Pearl Jam, Traveling Without Moving, Jamiroquai, who I hate, To the Faithfully Departed, The Cranberries, Wounded, Everything But the Girl. So quite an interesting year for music and I think culture. And I thought that certainly my memory of the run up to the millennium was that it was a very positive, upbeat time, I thought. And, it seemed in the world in those days that anything was possible, and now perhaps less so. Apparently not, Sue. Apparently not. So Dead Can Dance. Why Dead Can Dance? Because it's funny because I haven't got this album, but I've got a few albums that I will show as a discussion point. So when I first heard them, I always thought they were like a thinking man's Enigma.
Oh yeah.
Because a similar kind of vibe, that sort of, as you said, spiritual kind of Catholic kind of, obviously not quite the same, because Enigma has lyrics from the Marquis de Sade, which is an entirely different kettle of fish. But why Dead Can Dance? Is this a band that you've always kind of interested?
Okay. So the link I said in one of those, in that intro bit, I think for me was the 4AD label. Now, a number of people, I know you've had Cocteau Twins on. Someone beat me to having Cocteau Twins on your program, and congratulations to doing that. So I discovered Cocteau Twins in about 1983, I think it was.
Yeah,
and it was that moment where I can tell you I was in a photo lab thing, doing some printing, some black and white printing, and the guy who ran it put this the Cocteau Twins on. I put it down, and I swear I ran to the record shop and I said, "Can I have this album?" And I said, because it's just, completely different. And that took me on a journey into the 4AD label. And Deck and Dance was one of those bands that I discovered probably in about 85, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, because I was in Oxford Poly, and the Ents guys who I was doing some work with, just getting some events on, one of them kind of said, "I've been given this album." And he said, I really don't know about anything about it.
Yeah.
He said, "You have it. You're kind of one of those weirdos who kind of listen to this kind of different stuff. You have it." And I just thought that was just fantastic. I think it was Spleen and Ideal, and it was. You're going to show a copy.
I am going to show a copy.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And I hope, I hope that's the first edition. Be nice.
That isn't, because it's got a shiny cover.
Yeah. But anyway,
I've got first edition of that one though.
Ah, beauty.
Yeah, the Serpent's Egg.
Mm. So that it was that exploration. I think at that time in my life was then kind of, I was so into music. I was so kind of exploratory. And I think, let's say, the Cocteau Twins took me into this label, and then I went a bit bizarre on it, and just like looked at all the different bands. So you had Bauhaus originally on it, you had Pixies on it, Throwing Muses, a band called Diff Juzz, all these kind of very different, very obscure avant-garde type of stuff, and it just resonated. It was so different to what we've been used to. I thought this is really, really interesting, and I just got hooked.
Yeah, I mean, I remember that I was I running, or I think I was working in a hi-fi shop, and this guy came in with an armful of records and said, I'd like to listen to some hi-fi. And yeah, and it was this that he brought in. And I put it on, and I was just completely blown away by this. And it's very much one of those, for me, one of those. I was going to say sounds, but it's the music, it's the voices, it's the harmonies, it's the way it's mixed, it's the quality of production. That actually what you want is a really big hi-fi system and a really dark room. It's best listened to by candlelight, I think.
Yes,
this stuff. And I remember the first time that I put the needle in the groove, I just was, oh my god, this is amazing. And this guy, now I've never seen these guys live, and this guy was talking about them, and he said, it's a breathtaking experience going in. And he was like a big fanboy, every time they did anything at all, he was there.
Brilliant
stuff. And yeah, it was it was a shock hearing this stuff. But interestingly, because this was before the days of the internet, quite some time before the days of the internet. So a lot of the stuff was quite difficult to learn about a lot of these artists.
Yeah.
So I had assumed, partly correctly it transpires, but I had assumed that they were an Irish band for some reason.
Interesting.
So I'd never bothered to look into it until obviously this week, and they were founded in Melbourne.
Yeah,
which is just like, oh, and I thought that's strange because it definitely sounds really Irish. It sounds Catholic, doesn't it? The music,
yes.
And then obviously they are both Irish by descent, so it's kind of quite interesting that it comes out in the music, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I forgot to apologize to all those people listening in that I was going to say this is health warning territory, because this as Adam was quite rightly describing, this album is one where you probably want to listen to it late at night and in a dark room, not on a Friday after a hard day's work, and probably off to some venue to have a liquid. But yeah, I think that was fascinating. I did know that quite early. I think I looked into it. You know, I knew that Lisa was born in Melbourne. Brendan was born in London, but I say that Irish connection. And this album in particular was actually recorded when Brendan was living in Ireland. He had his own studio in some old church or something, which I think probably has a resonance through the album, doesn't it? Because I think you're right. It picks up a lot of the Irish, well, lot of. There's an undertone of the Irish, Gaelic, Celtic, you know, bit harmonies and things sitting behind it, and I think that's possibly influenced by where they recorded it.
Yeah, I think very possibly so. But I would be, So they were founded in 1981. It's, I mean, the most striking thing about this is her voice. You know, about the band, isn't it? You know, she's let's say about her, known for her unique style technique, glossolalia. So vocalizing, speaking in tongues, making up languages as you go along. So it's not like she doesn't ever sing lyrics, but normally she doesn't sing lyrics. She just sings words and sounds that sound like they're from another language. I think the other thing that I noticed is that she's got 3-octave range in her voice.
Yes,
which is like abnormal stuff, isn't it?
Absolutely, and I think we hear that on a couple of these tracks, as that range is just incredible. It's funny that whole debate about range, because I was having this debate about why does Bruce Springsteen, why has he got the ability to do like a 3-hour show, and someone was saying as a singer, I said, yeah, but his voice range is really small. So you can just carry on, because it's like having a conversation. You know, he's also a very good musician and whatever. But those who kind of have very, very large ranges, you can't do it. You can't go for 3 hours. And I think, and again, I think Lisa in their shows are quite condensed because of the ability to kind of hold those notes.
Yeah, I mean, I think also her. I think what's quite interesting about this band is that they've been quite on and off, haven't they? You know, they disbanded and then they reformed, and then they disbanded and they reformed, and they disbanded and they reformed, which gave her particularly much opportunity to do stuff away from deadlines. So she's had quite a lot of success in film scores, hasn't she?
Yes,
and, you know, she's had a number of awards for film scores, and I guess I guess the real question is, why this album? So it's not an album I particularly know, and Spleen and Ideal is really good, but this one, the Realm of the Dying Sun, is like one of the best albums I've ever heard. So why not that?
That's a good question. And I think if so, why I didn't do it, I think there's one particular track which we hopefully will hear, which I think was the one which really emotionally got me. Yeah. And I actually this week I was kind of going back and looking at a few things and thinking, you know, why was it this album? It is also that there was the 7th studio album, and it was, as you just alluded to, it was before they had one of their breaks. And I think they changed direction on this album. I think
definitely.
And I think that to me was an interesting point about, you know, we probably won't ever know why, but you know, what had those influences, and then where did they go? And one is they didn't. They broke up, and it made me kind of think, if people are like new to this band, and you're brilliantly showing, you know, there's some really brilliant material before it. And it's interesting to do that comparison. And I just thought it just stood out. I think it allowed an opportunity to have more of a conversation about the wider stuff, rather than just going for, oh, this is the really best one.
Yeah,
it's not perfect, but it's incredibly good. But it's all the storylines that go with it, which is brilliant about music, isn't it?
Yeah, and actually, one of the things that I've got in my notes, and I've got here again to illustrate it, is this is the first album from them that is more expansive. Everything else prior to that been very much in their swim lane, and with this album, I think that you can sense a lot of this going on in it.
Right, that's a good point.
The quality of the recording and some of the kind of the musical motifs that are used in this very much remind me of Peter Gabriel's Us. And you said about world music, and I've got one of the things from his world label here.
Lovely, yeah. That's nice.
I don't know if you got this.
Yeah, yes, it's a lovely album.
Yeah, amazing album. Nusret Fateh Ali Khan, must, just incredible. And I think the best come out of his real world album, his real world label. But that world music, you can sense it's like a journey around the world. This album, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So should we kick off? Oh, well, we should probably talk a little bit about how successful this was, because this was the most successful album, I suspect, isn't it?
Well, I don't know the data on that. So that's fascinating if it is. One of the points I was going to say, though, is really interesting, because I was going to do some show and tell as well. So I've seen them a few times, but I saw them on their very last tour,
right,
and before they split up. And this is the set list. See that?
Right.
But now sorry, I'll hold that where I can get a camera thing.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is there's not one of these tracks on there.
No.
Which shocked me, because I went back when I was digging this out, I was thinking it must have, I'm sure they played at least one from here, but they haven't. And that's a bit telling. If this was one of their most successful albums, why didn't they do it? And maybe it was a point, maybe there's too much backstory to them at this point. Maybe this was quite traumatic with them. Maybe this was the point where Brendan and Lisa said, we got to split. And one of the I think there was one really big reason that came out recently. It was that reason they stopped their touring was that somebody was ill. Someone's got a health problem, and I don't know about you, but I wasn't able to delve any further on that.
No.
And I could only assume it's maybe with Brendan, because Lisa was actually touring.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that. So the assumption was that it was Brendan that was not well.
Yeah.
But this got to so the weekly performance in the US World Albums chart. This got to number 1. It got to number 6 in the UK, and the end of year performance in the US Billboard World Albums chart was 11. And it's the only album that they produced that did actually get into proper charts. So I think what I really liked about this album, and although it's not an album that I kind of went, oh my god, this is their best work, I think what's really interesting is that it begins in classic Dead Can Dance way. The first track, not quite sure how to pronounce that.
No, I was waiting for you to do that.
Narika, let's say, or it is classic Dead Can Dance for me, and it's very much harking back to previous albums. So here we go. Yeah, I mean, it's always just such soothing stuff, isn't it? It's a texture that washes over you like a blanket almost.
Mm. It's interesting because looking up, kind of trying to get some stuff around, background to it. I thought this was interesting because it doesn't. It's it's talking about a mask. It's very. This is it's a spiritual event taking place, I think, in South America and in Mexico, and the event revolves around a kind of particular mask and the kind of tribalism that goes around some of some events which we only observe, and it's just that kind of just rhythm. You kind of just think you can just imagine yourself in a village, in a jungle,
Around a fire.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think a number of them do that, and I think that some of the rhythms and the motifs and the instruments that have been chosen are very indicative of particular countries and cultures.
Yes.
And it is world music in the truest sense, because I think what's really interesting about this is that on world labels like Real World and 4AD, typically they're about taking music and exposing it to a world audience, or an audience that they haven't had, where they've been very niche within their own cultures. And I think what's really interesting about this album, which hasn't happened with the previous albums, is that this is almost like it's sucking in those cultures and have formed the album. I think what I was quite impressed with Brendan was he plays a lot of instruments.
Yes.
So vocal, guitar, bass guitar, keyboards, hurdy-gurdy, percussion, bouzouki, mandolin, low whistle, and hammered dulcimer on this album. Which is quite an array, really, isn't it?
Yes. Put down your Strat.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit more than that. So second track, Song of the Stars. So for me, this absolutely made me think of kind of Aboriginal sort of music.
Yeah.
And, I've been to Australia a number of times, but I've never been to the outback. My only exposure to the outback has been through films, and I can imagine that when you lie on your back and it's warm and it's clear and there's no clouds or anything, it's a breathtaking experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, to me, it was interesting you say about Australia. It was more kind of jungle African bit, but it's the atmosphere, and it's just, as you say, it's that no unnatural light. It's darkness. You look up the skies and you see, oh my word, there are lots of little dots out there.
I should go and follow Brendan on X as soon as we're done. So here's Song of the Stars.
We are the stars which sing. We sing with our light. We are the birds of fire. We fly over the sky. Our light is a voice. We make the road for the spirits to pass over. For the spirits to pass over.
I'll whiz it on a bit because it's a long old track, this one, isn't it? 10 minutes. So. It's interesting, isn't it, that on this album it feels like this is a much smaller affair. Many of the tracks, you know, on previous albums, there's been lots of big orchestration, lots of string sections and wind sections, and here it feels much more like it's been created in a more intimate sort of environment, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good observation, and I think. Also, that simplicity of some of it, they might not come across as that, but in some ways the simplicity is really clear here. And you know, you made the point about Alpha Couture. You know, this to me was that kind of Saharan, North African piece sitting behind there, but it picks up the spiritual bit, you know, the Spiritchaser. To me, there's a bit, you know, bit of quite darkness in sitting behind some of this, because this is probably subjects and issues which we don't deal with in the way other cultures and might be dealing with, you know. And we're talking about demons and raising spirits, and that's probably a really quite a sensitive kind of topic area. But to me, this was that bit. It was sitting around, as you say, kind of just almost raising the dead, you know, looking to the stars and seeing what they're doing in relation to that. It's fascinating, just really.
Yeah, I mean, I all of the stuff. So I had quite a lot of driving this week, and one day I was driving down to Bath and back, so I was in the car for about 6 hours or so, and I just basically went through all of the Dead Can Dance back catalogue, and it was a very interesting journey. I do love this stuff. I mean, clearly 6 hours of listening to it in a day is quite a feat. But it was I do find it very soothing. I do find that the rhythms and the sounds that they use resonate with me in a very relaxing kind of way, which I love. And you know, it is kind of it certainly feels, I don't know, like an astral travel type thing almost. You know, but I think that's all part of it, isn't it? You know, it's all part of that kind of that spiritual out of body experience kind of thing. I'm sure that, you know, there's a whole load of interesting substances are consumed during the writing and production of this stuff.
Well, that is interesting, isn't it? Does that enhance it? I don't know. You don't know, do you? I can certainly relate to it. Do you know what I was just thinking then when we were talking about the kind of, I was thinking the Brian Cox thing about kind of solar. I don't know if you watched that on the TV the other day. Fascinating, right? All the stuff that's gone. I was just thinking, like, can you imagine those little satellites having this album and like they land on one of those, Uranus's planets and they meet some aliens and they say, hey chaps, have a listen to this. Does this relate to, this is what we produce back at home?
Yeah.
See the shock on their faces saying, yeah,
maybe because you see, I don't think that would be shocking.
No.
I think what would be shocking is if you put, I don't know, you put Taylor Swift on.
I'm gonna just say the same.
Not that I have anything against Taylor Swift, but the fact is that this is exactly what you would expect other life forms to come up with, isn't it? It's about sound textures and stuff like that, in the same way that bark is, and it's got all of those different bits going on and on. It's just a very interesting thing. Anyway, Indus, this wonderful. A lot of Indian culture in this.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you first listen to it, certainly for me, I thought, well, this is obviously Indian. I mean, from India.
Yes.
And I thought what was really interesting about this was that reading up, George Harrison got credit from Within You, Without You, one of his songs, where one of the melodies in this is not exactly copied from that, and I think it was stumbled upon by accident. It was clearly a finite number of combinations that you can have so many notes in. But interesting that the record company said, so they asked apparently George Harrison, is it all right if we use this? And he's like, yeah, no worries at all. And the record company said, well, we have to give him a credit on it.
Yes, I read that as well. I didn't. Naughty boy for not doing his homework, but I didn't go and listen to that track to see what the comparison was.
I didn't either. So let's have a listen and see if we can spot bits we know. I'll whiz it forward a bit because again it's a long old track. I suspect this is the George Harrison bit. Yeah, I mean, lovely. I think that certainly for me, this is a departure from the stuff that we would normally do, because it's not a series of tracks which have very explicit meanings, or even random meanings, with some of the lyrics that get written. But this is more about a mood, isn't it? It's about creating an atmosphere with the music. And the voices for both of them are, for the most part, not always in their songs, but for the most part, are just used as additional instruments to create texture and set up that mood. Yeah, exactly. So, this is, you need to sit down with a glass of scotch in a dark room and play it really loud. And, I think all of your troubles just evaporate in that situation.
No, I think I totally. I just think this is on this album, not giving the game away about what comes next, but this is absolutely the standout track, because you just shut your eyes and you listen to Lisa's vocal and you are just transported. Personally, there's a really good. There's a quite nice video on YouTube to back this up, and it's one of those videos. It has an image of kind of the mountains where this of the top end of the Indus, and it just morphs. And interesting, they use the Northern Lights as kind of one of the morphs into, and then you get this picture of an eye, and it's very deep and incredibly. I think one of the beauties is there's not a lot of description out there about what it is, so you're left to your own imagination, and that I think can be really good, isn't it? You kind of, what do you think, Adam? What do you think, Sue? What is it out there that really kind of inspires it? It's that combination, but they also the slow beat. There's nothing fast. And you can just think of that river just slowly coming through, and I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. One of the most beautiful songs I know.
Yeah, and I would absolutely concur. I think that one of the things, like I said, I've not seen them live, but looking at the videos of them live, the performance is very different to what you would normally expect from the band. It's not a bunch of people running and screaming and jumping around the stage. They stand there and they perform almost with a degree of reverence to the audience, which is very rare, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's interesting. Just before on their 2000, which is this T-shirt, in the 2005 tour, I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
They did a whole European and a North American tour, and I think for virtually every night they did a very special kind of one-off. This is the compilation album of it. Incredibly rare. If you've got the London one or something, it's worth a fortune. But the production on it is almost better than a studio album. It's just incredible, and you just think, how on earth do you do that? It's absolutely fantastic, and it's really sad that they're not going to be performing again. That Lisa is, but they're not, and I think that's for those who therefore won't be able to see them. It's a real shame, because they are incredible live.
I can imagine. So, the Song of the Dispossessed.
Yeah.
This has, for me, certainly a lot of Latin American kind of vibes going on here.
True.
And again, more of the same. It's more of that sort of musical texture, isn't it? It's kind of I think that one of the things that's really interesting about the majority of the tracks here is that you would, even if you listen to it many times, you would struggle to sing it or sing with it, because it just kind of all of the tracks kind of morph, don't they? They start somewhere and they kind of meander. You know, they have
Yes.
gentleness to them, and sometimes that gentleness has got loads of bass. Not so much on this album, but on some of the other albums, it has loads of bass and it has a grandeur to it, and then it kind of comes back in again, and it's much more intimate and one-to-one, and then it's grander. But all of them have this kind of gentle.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So here we go. The Song of the Dispossessed. Yeah, I mean, all of this kind of music, it does invite you to contemplate what the deeper meaning is, both the music and to everything, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And as I said before, I think that's fascinating. You know, especially at a time when everybody thinks everything has a meaning, and we need to know what it is. So actually, it's quite refreshing in some ways, where it's not, you know, there's not kind of a book on each chapter and each song, and you're left to your own devices. Well, it just would be amazing to sit down with them both and say, you know,
yeah, what inspired this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'd be very flattening. They said, "Oh, not a lot, really. Just I was just out in the pub and had an idea." You know.
Well, yeah, but I do think, you know, it's like the Beatles. I Am the Walrus. You know, it's like what inspired that, and you know, subsequently people have post-rationalized that and put all of these deep meanings on it. The truth of the matter is they were completely off their tits on LSD, and you know, it didn't mean anything at all. And I think what's really interesting is how we retrofit that that peg into the hole, don't we?
Yeah.
So
magic roundabout moment then.
Yeah, absolutely. Dedicase auto.
Yes. Oh, well said.
Yeah, well, that's my contribution to this track. Is the fact I've spent 3 days practicing it. So what do you reckon to this then?
It's lovely in just for the simpleness of it, and I like drumming, and I just think it's a lovely bit. And there's a couple of commentators who did write, kind of said, "Oh, I almost forgot it was there because it's not particularly long, and compared to everything else." So I think it's just really, really nice, short. Just again, campfire, fire, dark night. People. A bit of homebrew, very nice, just very mellow.
I mean, yeah, this is definitely the tribal headdress and stuff, dancing round whilst banging the spears and things on the ground, isn't it? It's got that kind of African Masai Mara feel, as has the next track.
True.
The Snake and the Moon, and I think that this is what I took away from the album, was the fact that it's a journey and a look at different cultures around the world, how they express themselves, and I like that, because it you know, you like the internet, you know, you can travel the world from the comfort of your own armchair, can't you? And I kind of really like that. So this is the Snake and the Moon. Yeah, this is the track, I think, more than any other, that gave me this kind of vibe.
Yeah,
you know, it's quite Gabriel-esque, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
No, I agree, and again, you said before, and I agree with you. A lot of this is intercontinental. You know, it's across the continents. But this is, again, takes me back to kind of North Africa, Sahara, and again, it's probably one of the faster tracks on here, and just again, some of this what we get is a lot of repeat rhythm. Is that, I don't know if that's the right kind of phraseology. So they're not kind of like expanding lots of guitar solos. It's all very quite structured, but it's all very multiple layers, isn't it? There's lots of different instruments coming in.
Lots of them. You know, the instruments are introduced one at a time.
Yes,
and it builds on that basis.
Yes,
and I've always found that very very comforting. You know, so Beethoven and Brahms and Bach and Berlioz and anyone else that I can think of that begins with a B, but also but also more recent stuff. You know, so Tubular Bells would be perhaps the best example of that, and Autobahn, Kraftwerk.
Yes,
you know, lots of that kind of. We've got this layer, we've established that. You've got, and it's almost like you've, you know, like doing that, isn't it? You know, where you've got the first thing going, and then you introduce another thing, and the audience are listening to it, and they've kind of got those two dovetailed together, and then you introduce something else that layers on top, and I like that, because it takes you on the journey, doesn't it? As a listener.
Yes,
and,
absolutely,
and particularly when there aren't words. Often, there are on some of the tracks, but for the most part, there aren't words to guide you through what's trying to happen. So it's very much a composition rather than a song, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that, yes, I totally agree with that. I think the you know, two things about the kind of words bit. One is, it will be fascinating because there's possibly a language being used. What it is, we don't know. It'd be fascinating to get somebody to translate it, because they might be saying, "Here I am having a dance around the fire." You know, we don't know what they're saying, and that's intriguing in itself, that kind of combination. But going back to my kind of why this band and things, and the link to Cocteau Twins is that Elizabeth Fraser, I don't know if you, when you did the cover before, she actually does quite a lot of singing in kind of almost tongues, really, and that was apparently because she was criticized really early on about her singing and the words not meaning much, and she just went, well, almost fuck that, I'm just going to sing in a sound, and then over to you to translate it. And I thought that was just brilliant. It's just, two thumbs up to you critics. I'm going to do what I want.
So reading back over my notes, Gerard began playing a pivotal role in the city's little band scene and fronted post-punk modern group Microfilm before co-founding Dead Can Dance with Perry. She explored numerous traditional and modern styles, laying the foundations for what became known as neoclassical dark wave. That sums it up beautifully.
Yes.
She sings sometimes in English and often in a unique language that she invented. In addition to singing, she's an instrumentalist for much of the work. But I think that's the key point. It is singing in. She's treating her voice like it's an instrument.
Yes.
And I love the fact that, as you said earlier, this is about you projecting what you want onto this.
Yes.
So the Song of the Nile, the penultimate song. Let's have a blast. So if this is a language that she's made up, she's obviously taught it to Brendan, hasn't she? Or is at least telling him what to sing at this point. It's another journey, isn't it? An exploration of a different cultural thing. I didn't get so much North African with this,
really,
Nile, but it's once again it's a soothing texture that wraps you, and interesting that they're both singing in this, because that's
yes,
kind of the norm for them as a band, isn't it?
And well spotted, exactly that point. This is quite rare.
Yeah, which brings us onto
Devotion. You've done your homework.
Yeah. I haven't done it on this one though. Devotion.
Yes. Devotion.
Yeah. So let's play a bit of this. So this kind of brings us full circle, doesn't it? So we've begun with that classic Dead Can Dance Irish vibe, traditional Celtic, Irish mysticism kind of feel at the beginning, and what their previous albums were. And we've travelled the world. We've lapped the earth. We've gone to the Latin America. We've gone to South America. We've gone to Africa. We've gone to the subcontinent. We've gone to Australia, and now we're back to Ireland again. That kind of soothing, like Clannad, but with talent.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because of this was, if you take all the albums up to this point, and this being the last one, and the fact that they broke up afterwards, it's almost like a lament. It's kind of,
yeah, it's like we've done everything we need to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I suppose you can read it two ways. There's a kind of sad bit, oh, we're about to break up, it's all gone. But also there's maybe a little bit of rejoicing. As you say, we've toured the world.
Yeah.
We've touched on lots and lots of different stuffs. And as a spirit, the spirit is
come home. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I don't get any sadness from this last track at all. No. I mean, it's gentle and slow, but I find it more like it's just like,
yes, that's a good take.
Like on at Christmas when you finish the washing up and everyone's left, and you sit down and you go, feet up, and now I can relax.
And put this on.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it's like we've done all of that kind of stuff. We've travelled the world. We've absorbed all of these cultures, but actually the Irish heritage that we both have is kind of where we are most comfortable, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what a great album!
Thank you.
I have really enjoyed this, and not just because it's a good album and it's got so much kind of breadth of stuff on it, but because it's reignited my interest in Dead Can Dance, which I guess I hadn't listened to for 10 years. Dead Can Dance is one of the few bands where I have them both on vinyl and on CD.
Yeah. Good for you. Good for
you.
But and it's really rare, Adam, that when a lot of people, interesting people who listen in or catch up later, how many people actually had heard of the band before this. And I was saying, and that's one of the reasons I chose it, because I picked up when you said them and I'm thinking, oh, I like them. And I genuinely hope that, though it hasn't made us all go running around and go, yeah, cheering, it's just taken us on another bit of a journey, about music and what it does.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to have some experience of them, and everybody needs to have one of their albums in their record rack, because it is quite unlike anything else. So I said at the beginning, it's like thinking man's Enigma.
Yes,
and Enigma is a really good album. Well, it's a really good album from them, but it's dance music. No, there's anything wrong with dance music. I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but its purpose is to get you up dancing and kind of flopping around on the dance floor. And Dead Can Dance isn't.
Yeah,
it's a very solitary experience listening to it.
Yeah.
So Adam, thank you so much. It's always nice to do stuff with another Adam, obviously. So there's no show next week, but the week after, I'm being joined by Andrew Slesser, and we're going to do Paul Weller, Wildwood, which again will be a new experience for me. So until then.